Hello, my name is Paul Allain. I'm leading the Physical Act Training and online A to Z project. So we did 2 weeks of filming, and at the end of it we thought we'd sit our 6 trainees down and get them to talk. So that's Noof, Olaf, Mara, Hannah, Antonio and Emma. We'd asked them to think about what the practice meant for them, things that they'd learnt, how it related to other practitioners and to their own practice that they do as performance. And it was really interesting. They had lots of insights into moments of success, moments of failure, the learning process, difficulty. And we decided that it'd be really useful to make a documentary about this. And I think what's important about this documentary is that we hear the trainee's voice. It's not about Frank and myself as the expert trainers passing on our knowledge in a linear process. It's really about a dialogue, a practice of interaction where we're working with them, developing the individuals as creative performers. And what's important in this film is that we hear their voice, we hear the trainee's voice.
I think you discover a lot in the exercises that we do, but there's also a sense of you can do an exercise much later and you rediscover some new quality in it. It can be useful to kind of go back to an exercise that you know really well, that you're comfortable with if you get stuck, so if you get a block. So when we were doing the work where we had the images and we were creating a kind of more of a phrase with it, if you got stuck, I found it useful to go back just to the images, so you kind of return to something and then you rediscover within that moment.
For me, it's working basically as an ensemble to an extent, working off one another as well as from within, and playing off each other as well, which is embodied into the training, which is what makes it so fun and lively, I guess.
It keeps it spontaneous if you have that playfulness. And because physical theatre is very much, I find that it's you won't have a script. If it's rehearsal or if it's just you're doing some training, then it's just some exercises they do, and that's just spontaneous things like impulse exercises, just a lot of improvisation and playfulness. And then I find that if I'm too serious, then I kind of block myself. So kind of keeping that playfulness open and not knowing as well is also nice and fun.
Yeah, I think playfulness is really key to it. Even people have the assumption that if you're being playful, it's always to create comic work, and that's not true, because playfulness opens up you to so many potentials, and it's so useful. So then you can create kind of much more serious characters from it, but from which the audience would not necessarily have known that you were playing around or fooling around in rehearsals, maybe even doing clowning. But you've created this very kind of hard character. I just think with the work that Mara and I have done, Foxtail, the most recent performance, Mr. Jordan's Funeral, I played a really kind of horrible, bitter character, but it came out of all the playfulness that we'd done, and we still had playfulness on stage even when we were performing, and that was essential in the development of kind of more harder characters.
So when you mean playfulness, was it like a spontaneous thing or an improvised thing that happened, or was it just planned things but you still had fun with it?
Do you mean in the performance?
Yeah.
In the performances we still use improvisation, but a lot of our work that we develop in the rehearsal space is improvised. So we do really longitudinal improvisations, kind of 45 minutes an hour, and just generate a load of material and then kind of pick it apart. So for me, improvisation is fundamental to actor training as well. And it's a really difficult thing to grasp, where you might do a really long improvisation and you take 30 seconds from that and people think, but why bother? But by improvising and playing, you wouldn't have got that 30 seconds, rather than so often you can see people struggling to generate material, and it's because they're going, well, this is where we want to get to, and we're going to go through A, B, C and D, and actually by improvising you kind of go all around the place, but you get to the same route with, I think, more creative and inventive ideas.
I think particularly the exercise with using the text and using each other to sort of surprise each other when we were challenging each other in pairs. that for me also brings something different that you might not have expected, and through that play, for example, you might find something in a character, whether you might have set your character as a stereotype beforehand, or you might have seen that particular character played by lots of different actors and have already a preconceived idea of what that character should be, and then the work that we do here gets rid of that and allows you to embody and bring what you have to that character and see what else is there, because character isn't a two-dimensional thing. It becomes more three-dimensional, I think, with the physical actor training that we do and have been doing.
Therefore, I will take 6pence in earnest of the bear ward and lead his apes into hell.
And spit it out.
It's also kind of like a molding, or like you're molding a character, or you're shaping it into, like, you're trying out different things, like with the exercise we did, following each other and like listening to the sound, and then what happens if I hold my partner and restrain them from movement, or like you're shaping the person physically, but also then you're shaping the voice and like those kind of things.
It was interesting yesterday when we had your two texts put against each other, and neither of you had planned that kind of interaction with each other, but because you were kind of improvising and going with it and playing, although you were repeating a sequence that you'd done, you were becoming open to the people around you, and therefore kind of this quite interesting dynamic and comedy was coming out of two scenes that were otherwise completely initially unlinked.
And what is really fun with that for me, like for someone who's performing that, is that I have in that improvisation, I have no idea why the audience is laughing, or like what is the points that is happening within the performance. And then that's also why I find it important and very helpful to film some of the work if it's like in a rehearsal, because then of course you can watch it, but like it's just fun to not know and then like just kind of like keep going.
Yeah, the idea of comedy as well, because the way that we work, or through improvisation, comedy isn't forced. Like sometimes if you know you're wanting to do a piece that is slightly comic, you might force that comedy, or what you think might be comic might not be in another situation, or one night it might be work, on another it doesn't. So having that sense of aliveness and improvisation, even if you're performing a really tight score, every night is different, so maintaining that aliveness and embodiment and having that as, Frank always talks sort of the tip of the iceberg. If you have that work and then you're showing something that is, the process is there, but the audience doesn't always see that.
And I think it's that openness that because you've trained, when you get on stage, like you said, the tip of the iceberg, the openness and receptiveness to the situation that you're in, so responding to the different performance space you might be in, the different audience who may be really, really with you, or maybe kind of less with you, and so therefore you have to work harder. But having that openness to continue to keep the performance alive makes it interesting to watch, and I think you get that quality from training.
Yeah. I think it goes across all different types of performance, so we're doing physical acting, and a lot of the work that maybe most of us or some of us have done has been primarily devising, but it would be really interesting for me. I'm wanting to see how that translates into complete like naturalistic work, how training like this can then be transferred into something that isn't completely devised.
Has any one of you done that? Used any of the work in naturalistic acting, or used any of the exercises?
I started a couple of years ago, but that was for like a Shakespeare acting class, and I was the only one that was warming up before performing my monologue or duologue, or I would, in my own sort of rehearsal time, move my voice and body around the space in a studio that I took to rehearse in, but no one else was doing that. And I remember sitting in a circle in this acting class talking about what the most important things in acting is, and no one mentioned any kind of physical training or anything, and there wasn't any kind of movement training or anything that we're doing there, which I found really bizarre.
Okay, so an exercise is a little performance in miniature, if you like. There's particular techniques you have to be aware of, the craft of it, so it has to be technically precise, but also let's just explore what is actually going on through the exercise as it develops and then as it comes to an end. So if you just could begin. So Hannah, you're going to have your legs stretched by Olaf. Okay, so here already there's an important element that the position of the exercise needs to be right. She's upright and relaxed, which is important. He's got this hand here, so he can help stabilize her as she starts to come off balance. This hand is on the knee, which is crucial, because if he has it too high in the thigh, she can bend this knee. If it has it too low, again, she can bend. So he's just making sure this leg stays straight. This foot here is facing forwards, so that she's going to get maximum stretch in a particular way, particularly in the hamstrings. Olaf is straight, he's not putting any pressure on his back, and he's going to come up slowly. And just listen to her breathing. It's very easy and tempting to talk at this point, so I think it's really vital that you resist that temptation and actually just listen to the breath, because that gives you an indication of what's going on. See some tension creeping in. So as soon as you start to increase the tension in the leg through this stretch,
I think that's really interesting that no one else warmed up or thought of their bodies. It's kind of that disconnect, I suppose, between the brain and the body, thinking that your brain can do it all, where actually even when you're talking, it's coming from your body out. You can't talk or you can't really think without engaging your body in some way. So to ignore that factor seems really unusual.
I think it's unusual, but I think it's very common as well. And for me, because it's the first time that I've ever done any work like this, I really want to use it in my other work and my other rehearsals, but it will be up to me to find how to do that. And I did have the opportunity to use it in a naturalistic acting module that I did at uni, but it is up to me to do it. And I think now that the process is ending, I can see ways of bringing it in more, because it is up to you. I know that sounds silly, but no one really teaches you to warm up and things like that. And breaking it down like we have has been really important. And the work that we've done with resonating the voice in partners and on your own, I think will be essential in work to come, and I can then teach other people that I work with.
Good? Yeah. Good. Nice, very nice. You were really connected to the sound. What do you think? It's almost too much. It's good. You have to find a balance between being inside it and then actually being able to remember things.
I think the moments when the words didn't sound like words.
Yeah, you like those?
Yeah, when it got lost in the sound.
I think you've got a really interesting approach to voice that you kind of briefly talked about, from learning and having, is it to recite the Quran, and that the way you use your voice is very different to the rest of us who haven't used that.
It's actually because from I'm small, I like to read something loudly, and like what we have in our society or something, and in our also religion, the Quran. And I sit down when I'm small and I try to read the Quran, and I try to read it loudly, and I see. First time I try from here, and after training and after I read it, I find I read it from here. It's the voice come from here, and it's strong more. That's why I find myself in the voice, like training or something. And I start search about the voice training and how to make my voice better and better and better. And after that, it will come like this. It's strong.
I think practitioners that might influence me or the work that we've done, obviously people like Grotowski, kind of that style of work, and personally John Britton, who I know Mara has worked with, just kind of some influence and influences from kind of anyone you work with, but have come through people I definitely find in this work as well as kind of my own work.
I think also we've touched on Eugenio Barber a lot, sort of especially when we're working with Frank, so the extra daily activities. So I always find that as a good starting point for me when I'm sort of beginning with something. I remember that that helping when I was starting my solo work, when we're sort of working on your own, sort of having those, you know, creating like really simple scores.
Remember the area above you as well?
Yeah, John Britton for me, when I was training with him, it was the aspect of finding joy in what you're doing, especially in improvisation. So at the end of every day we had to improvise and find a beginning, middle and an end, either as a solo, in a pair, in a group. And you'd always do something you love. If you can't find that, do something you like. So it was, if you're finding yourself on stage doing something you don't like, stop and do something else that you do like, what you want to do. And it was that sort of almost like repatterning how we're taught and how we learn that I found really useful.
And I suppose the breathing that we did with Paul and the low levels and moving, but I think that's Gardenicia exercise.
Oh, yes.
So I think, exposing yourself to other cultures as well is really important, because in each culture you have a very set way of doing things, and actually you can explore different ways. So I wonder if the people who are kind of from different cultures have different experiences, kind of maybe different practitioners or
different people that inspire you. Is there anyone in Greece that inspires you?
Well, apart from the ancient, Greek philosophers, not so much.
It's the same in Norway as well, but it's not much with physical theatre.
Yeah, the modern day.
It's really strange how it's like very, very broadening here and like other European countries, but then in Norway it just seems like it's something that they have no clue what it is, and it just hasn't come into the country, I guess.
Interested, in terms of if we were set like a ensemble task, what would come through? Because that's what I loved about ensemble, working in ensembles, that everyone brings their own backgrounds and experiences within the space, and working with that I find is really useful, and it creates a lot of potential rather than if you just get into a room like, okay, this is what we are doing and already setting that. And then everyone having to sort of fit into that somehow, and maybe not fully fitting into that. So, just being with who is in the room and what we could all bring, and in terms of all the different cultures that we have as well.
أشم رائحة غريبة لا أستطيع أن أنام لون الجدران يقتلني أحس أني أختنق الذعر في كل مكان هناك شخص يطاردني هناك شخص يطاردني.
In terms of all the different cultures that we have as well.
I think that's a continual learning process, so you have to continue opening yourself not only to different practices but different people, and I think it would be really interesting if like Noof led a voice class or something, or if we had to attempt to, or you were teaching us how to storytell or read the Quran, and kind of the different things that you guys that you might take for granted because you've got different cultures would actually be really interesting to learn about. And I think it would be, I definitely have learnt stuff from working with all of you guys, and it would be nice to, like Mara said, do some kind of an ensemble, something more or bigger, just to see how through going through this training we've kind of perhaps come together, but then we've also bringing so much more into the pot essentially.
For me it's been inspiring because we're all different ages, and as Mara was saying, we're all at different stages in our training, and for me, I was very much a beginner at the start of this process, whereas some of you have worked with Frank and Paul a lot before in the past, and I think just knowing that even though some of you are really experienced compared to me or Antonio maybe, I've still seen that you're learning and relearning and rediscovering, like what you were saying earlier, that it's continual and it doesn't really stop. And it's nice to see when we all get it wrong and things like that, and it's been nice to doing it as a group.
Yes.
And always have the same people instead of a larger group or new people coming in all the time. Because also we've gotten used to everybody's bodies as well, which was a lot of fun.
I felt like the Guardianita work, sort of working in pairs and warming up together, and all the acrobatic works we were doing. I think that's also a great way to sort of start learning to work together. I also have loved the fact that we've all come from different stages and from different places, and even though, you know, I might, appear to be more experienced, within this group, I've been out of it for a while and coming back into it, so it's always a sense of rediscovering, even if you've done something yesterday and you're coming back into it today, or done something last year and coming back into it today. Yeah, you're at a different place and you're coming into it afresh, always. Yeah.
I think the use of different bodies is also really interesting, because everyone has a different body and different strengths and different weaknesses, and when you work, kind of like you just said, when you work, you get to learn different people's bodies and how people move, and then you can begin to move with them, because when you first get together it's quite difficult. You're like, okay, I'm not sure how this person is going to be with their body, like where are their strengths, like what do they enjoy doing, what are they uncomfortable with doing, and once you kind of get through that, you can work really productively without having said a word to each other.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think an example of an exercise that we did was the voice work, resonating the voice, and how to explain. We had to touch our partner and move around to feel different parts where the voice was resonating together. I think that was a really good one, because it was up to what you were doing in that pair to where you would go with it, sort of thing. And I think that was an example that it's easy to read where your partner wants to go, and it can just be your head or your back, and it's also good for the voice anyway, but that exercise is good with warming up, partner work sort of thing.
Feel it. You start to feel some moments when the voices come together into one, and then suddenly you feel, oh, I can feel that resonance in the cheek, which is making my resonance. And sometimes, is that my resonance, is that her resonance? So just playing with the partner, as we did, just exploring, where is that sound? Oh, I can feel it in the head. Oh, I'm going to lie, and just go with the flow of it. Thank you.
Why you feel the rhythm exercise it's difficult for you?
Which one? That is difficult.
Yeah.
I think, it's probably got to be like some of the rhythm stuff we did, because I'm just really bad at rhythm, in the sense of like, I really want to do it, but my body just can't. I don't know if it's like, and it's because I can hear the rhythm, I can understand the rhythm, but doing it physically, I can do it for a certain amount of time, but then it just kind of fades out, or I lose focus. So it might be an idea of that I need to work on my focus within rhythm work.
But I'm going to do all of it first, all right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I can't do rhythm doesn't mean that I don't want to stop doing it. No, that I do want to stop doing it. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense. Like, I still want to do rhythm at work, and that just comes with practice. I just have to practice and practice. But sometimes there is the time where I kind of go, oh, I can't do this, I don't want to do it, because it's just too hard, and I keep falling out, I messing up, and then I mess other people's rhythm up. But like, then it's like good to have a group that also like encourage you and like joking around about it, like keeping it fun and light.
We then had to, I think it was the clapping one, the higher clap one. For me, in my brain, it just doesn't compute that kind of switch. And it's always like, whenever I've done dance classes, anything like that, I learn the steps one way and then they make me do it the other way, and I just can't do it. And for me, it's nice that I'm not the only one who struggles with it. But also I think for me, the numbers help, but I think I'd probably need even to have like clap, stamp, clap, clap, stamp, just so I can really connect. And I struggle kind of similarly with you. When I overthink it, then it goes wrong. If I just let my body do it, I on the whole can get it. But when I start thinking about it, then it just goes.
It's also like that, like when you're clapping, it was Frank said that it's the remembering like the X in the center, and like as you clap, it's this like contraction and your leg goes up, and then it's
that really helped me as well. Yeah.
But then again, like I started overthinking it, and I was just
once you get something in your body, you don't have to think about it, and you can just trust your body. But when you're trying to learn, so like the X, and I was like, okay, my legs got to be here, my arms were, and so for me that overcomplicated it. But once, if I'd have practiced that and got it into my body, then that would have been really helpful.
But I find it really interesting with that when you're saying about the two rhythms swapping, or like the just that the rhythm goes to the hands instead of the feet, or like in that sense that can also be, because I've also experienced, I can't remember exactly what kind of exercises, but exercises where I've been taught it this way or that way, and then someone else goes, no, try it that way, and then I can't do it, and then you kind of get frustrated because like you're so obsessed to use this very specific rule within an exercise, but by keeping yourself open to how to do an exercise as well, or redevelop your own version of the exercise, as long as it contains the main, the centered focus of what you're trying to do.
I think it's very hard to unlearn anything really, because like habits, like bad habits. I remember when we first started working on this, and we were walking around the room, and Frank pointed out that my jaw was tense and that I keep my lips together, and it really affects my whole body and my breathing. And I'd never noticed that before, and I've done other physical work, or even when I used to do ballet, I must have been doing that when I was thinking, and that would have affected my body. But straight away Frank pointed it out, and even now towards the end I'm still having to think, but now it's less, it comes into it less. But that is something that also I had to unlearn and reteach myself how to
do you think about, okay, now I need to relax, or is there something you do to relax?
I think at the start of an exercise, when we've got to be grounded and be aligned and all of that, that's a part of it for me, the head and the jaw, and walking around as well is when it can come into it, because I'm thinking where I'm going, and I'm looking at everyone, and I'm thinking about, oh, that's who, and all of that. So it's just a process, a part of that I have to bring into it. But it's also when you think about breath, and we always think about breathing in every exercise we do, so that's a part of it. So if I'm not breathing right, then that won't be right, sort of thing.
Have you found that it's gone into some other part of your body? Because once you relax one place, then you tend to tense somewhere else. Or that's what I found. Like, okay, I'm really, for me, I always have a tense jaw, so I always focus on that. But then through that, I might be tensing my hands or not breathing properly. So
and my shoulders, I do work like this. So it's just trying to find relax, and it's really useful to have an outside eye point some like your bad habits out to you. So I worked with Frank a few years ago, and he would forever be saying, bend your knees, Hannah, knees. And so it's kind of whenever anyone says to me knees, I have that image of Frank in my head, and he hasn't said it to me yet, so I think that I've improved on that habit. But I think it's really useful to have someone take time to watch what you're doing, to point out, because we all hold, like if we're dominant on, for example, the right side, you might hold your right shoulder down a little more, so to have someone pick it out so that you can get to this alignment and kind of more neutral state is really useful.
Earlier on in the work we were doing, I was with you, and it's that lift where you land on your shoulders and you gradually come down, like that. And I remember really struggling to connect with my centre and my core to control the landing of my legs. And I remember it took me ages, because we were travelling across the room, and the reason why I could tell I was doing it wrong is because my legs would slap down, and it was only me making the sound. So that I really struggled with connecting all of it. And I think it was just practicing that and make sure that I was feeling it as I was coming down, nice and controlled, instead of just thinking, oh yeah, I'm landing, I don't need to think about the end bit of it. But that's something that I struggled with.
Is that, the continuous movement?
Yeah. And then you would do it with your partner, and then it was like a roly-poly.
Because I struggled with that one, I think, because I was so nervous with my head. Like as you come down, I was kind of like, oh my god, my head's going to crack on the floor. And it's not, but that kind of tensing and not trusting or believing in yourself and your partner actually makes it more likely to happen than if you were just like, no, it's fine, my partner's got my weight, I'm going to tuck my head in. Even if I fall, it's like that far off the floor. It's kind of getting out of that panic, because that causes you to tense up.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, me too. But in that like baby jump and the other jump here, when Paul holds me, I feel I will fall down. I don't trust, I don't know. I can't do it. I don't know why, but I feel like always I will fall down.
And it was interesting that you showed us the video where, was it your sister you'd
Yes.
done it with, and when she was nervous, then she kind of comes down, it doesn't work, but then when she's more confident.
Yeah, and she trusts me. I told her trust. Yeah.
I think the final step of that one is taking your arms off, because you take your arms off, don't you? I think the final bit is the scariest, because if you are still holding, it's fine if you drop down, because you'll have support, but I think that is the scariest bit, which I think a lot of us did struggle with that final stage. Well, I did, definitely.
Well, that's the moment where it's total trust in your partner,
Yeah.
because here you're
It's
still
total balance,
relying
yeah.
on yourself, whereas the moment you let the go, you're
That's
just
it.
saying completely to the partner.
I find with all that kind of work, the garden meter acrobatics work when you're working, on each other. For me, because I always feel a bit hesitant in the beginning when I'm taking someone else's weight, because I struggle on and off with my lower back. But then I found that you're using your skeletal frame, so that enabled me to be more confident in lifting people with like different body weights. That once you build up that trust between, and you then discover the different bodies in the group, that it doesn't matter who you're taking on most of the time, it's fine. Whether that be as simple as lifting someone on your back or doing the roly-poly. I remember being with Antonio and in the beginning being a bit hesitant, being like, oh, but he's taller than me, I'm so petite, like, will this work? And it was fine, like, once you got into the flow of it and, like, technically, learn how to adjust. For me, thinking of my body as, like, the skeletal frame, like, not the muscles or anything, just, like, the bones, be like, okay, the bones are going to support this. That really helped me.
I think it's easy to kind of match yourself with someone of a similar body type. So like it would be easy for me and Antonio to go and work together because we're relatively tall.
Yeah.
But actually it's more interesting when you're working with someone kind of shorter, smaller, bigger than you, because you have to learn how to adjust to that person, and then when you do it, you're like, okay, it can still work, and it was absolutely fine, and kind of any insecurities you had about yourself or working with someone else kind of go, because you can manage stuff.
How was that for you, Antonio, when you did that exercise tomorrow?
Well, to start, personally, I wasn't focusing on my skeletal framework, so I was focusing on using my muscles more, because I didn't really trust using my body. I don't know what it was exactly at the time, but I didn't want to do something wrong, being in the wrong position and just mess something up, and hurt myself in a way.
So you were using like muscular tension.
Exactly, yeah.
So like tensing up in the whole body.
Yeah.
I think also because that it's quite obvious, that we're different body shapes, that when you're going over, I guess you're trying to help
I can
yourself.
manage, yeah.
It's okay. yeah, but then after a while, I think you were able to trust me and that it was fine.
Okay, I'll try something different.
I think you were able to relax a bit more in that exercise.
I think it's really easy to assume that to do the exercises that we've done, you have to be super strong. But you don't. You just have to, it's like the skeletal strength. It's kind of when you're a base, you don't have to be kind of a super strong weightlifter. You just have to kind of ground yourself, I suppose, and trust that it's going to work, and you're relying on like skeletals, and it's very unlikely to break, so you're going to be fine, and you don't have to kind of be doing all these squats and everything. They help, but you don't have to be really strong to do the work.
But I think it's also, you have to be mindful with it, like knowing or communicating, look, I've, a bit sensitive on my back today, just so you're aware, and I'm going to let you know if that is a problem. I've had to do that sometimes, and I think it's just really learning to be aware of what you can and can't do in that moment, not to say that you can't do that ever. For example, you've got an ankle, it's not to say that you can't do certain things, it's just on that day, a specific moment. So,
I think you need to trust yourself and your partner.
Yeah.
This is the point. When you don't trust yourself and your partner, you cannot do anything. In all exercises, when you trust each other, you make it nice and easy. But when you don't trust, you feel like nervous. I can't. Maybe I fall down. Maybe he fall down. Maybe I hurt him. Like this is what I struggle in the first. Like, no, she is thin more than me. She can't take my weight. She can't take. This is what I think about. I don't want to hurt anyone, and after that, I feel okay when I'm trust.
But you don't hurt anyone because it's done in such a safe way that you kind of make assumptions, and then it's quite, when you achieve something, it's really rewarding and nice, particularly if you've struggled with it.
I think in the landscape work exercises, I think I actually, when I think about it, I sometimes cheat by acting, jumping, stepping on stones, or pretending that the floor is hot rather than imagining it. Like there's a very distinct difference, I think, in it, because
you don't feel.
Not necessarily. I feel it. Like I'm like, I think there's a difference between imagining the stones and actually kind of seeing the stones and then jumping on them, rather than pretending to act or pretending to jump on the stone, if that makes sense. So it's just the movement of going like that, or just going instead of actually seeing the hot floor and like why it's hot, or what kind of warmth is it. Am I on a volcano? Is it on a giant stove? Like why is it warm? Kind of that idea, and like seeing these concrete things in the imagination. I actually don't know why I cheat. I think it's just like something I've done a lot of the time, and I haven't really thought of that difference actually before now, which I haven't been very I haven't been aware of, which is actually really interesting.
I don't know if anyone else found this, but it was very simple when we were practicing, all the articulation and practicing walking on different, working up the knees or the ankles or different parts of the foot. When we were asked to walk, I think it was the image then was like as if you're riding a bike, but you're keeping that image but just walking normally. That really worked for me, because it was something so simple as it started from something so technical, and then the image was added afterwards, like as we were doing, it's like, as if you're riding a bike, and then imagining that really kept going for me. I don't know if anyone else found that.
So you're talking about doing the movement and then introducing the image, rather than introducing the image.
Yeah.
And then
so it has to be something like really concrete. Okay, I'm not focusing on that. Again, it's that sense of layering it onto something that you're already doing. For example, that's the sphere is built up, whereas this we've been more working on articulation for a while before that had even been introduced, and then once that image became a physical action, but then that was taken away, and then you were still imagining that energy became really strong, or that sensation I felt was still going. I don't know, it was a very different way of accessing the imagination than you normally tend to do.
I think it's really interesting when you talk about that, because it's kind of like you have, as a performer, you can have secret tasks that the audience don't know about. So, for example, your character might have absolutely nothing to do with the bike, but in the training, you've kind of worked with this notion of walking like you're riding a bike, and you translate that on stage, and it's not obvious to the audience, but it's your way to have found that character. So it's kind of using these secret tasks that you don't necessarily share to produce movement in a certain way.
It's like a different way of having an intention. Because I often find that when we approach text, that you're already like preset, okay, with this bit I think I'm going to have this kind of intention, or I don't know if you ever really worked with a text like, okay, you know, break it down, what's this thought, what's that thought, and this is a beat and that's a beat and this happens here, and okay, I'm going to be working on delivering this line with this intention, and it is a different, you know, that intention, it's a physical one, and that's part of your character that I guess is more of a gesture or movement that the audience can't see, but it becomes like an embodied physicality of whatever characteristic you're trying to portray. So that is equally as important as, okay, how I'm going to say this, whether you find that through playing as we have been doing, or through approaching it as mainly maybe in a more, I don't know, Stanislavskian way.
What should I do with him? Dress him in my apparel and make him my waiting gentlewoman? He that hath a beard is more than a youth, and he that hath no beard is less than a man, and he that is more than a youth is not for me, and he that is less than a man, I am not for him. Therefore I will take sixpence in earnest of the bear ward and lead his apes into hell. What shall I do with him? Dress him in my apparel and make him my waiting gentlewoman? He that hath a beard is more than a youth, and he that hath not a beard What shall I do with him? What shall I do with him? Dress him in my apparel and make him my waiting gentlewoman? And he that hath not a beard is less than a man, and he that is more than a youth is not for me, and he that is less than a man, I am not for him. Therefore, I will take sixpence in earnest of the bear ward and lead his apes into hell. What shall I do with him?
That, like, resources like these ones, where you have online resources that kind of connect with the people watching it, because the one struggle I have had when working with like physical things is you have loads of books, but it's so hard to like adapt the book from into the rehearsal space. So I would love to imagine that in the future there would be loads more of these kind of videos, and like where there's this conversation between the academic school or a college or things like that, where they see a video that someone's filmed, or another college has filmed something, and then the other responds with another exercise, or like passing information that kind of way, and
in a more visual way.
In a more visual way, and like having that conversation is interesting, and
And I know this sort of is a resource for, you know, educational institutions and schools and colleges and universities, and I wonder, exactly what you're saying, like whether that can open up, and where I'm sure more people are already doing it, you know, the concept of filming yourself in rehearsals and showing that, but that's a very closed off. But in terms of the physical practices, it would be really great to see that, how that will be in 25 years in, you know, whether that be in England or in, you know, different countries in the world, how that information is being communicated and shared, and we'll see.
So we're interested in how you are going to use this online resource, the A to Z. What's your favourite letter? Where are you going to start to explore?
Have you thought about where you might train? Are you limited for studio space, for example? Why not improvise and find a space maybe where you're living, or another communal space that's someone else that you might be working with? Maybe even go outside if the weather provides. Work with what you have is my advice.
Is this the first time you're trying something like this? So take your time and pause it and reflect.
To learn some new physical actor training techniques, please go to the online resource and just look some stuff up, get a friend and try them out.
لا توقفكم إصابة ولا يوقفكم شيء. أنا متعورة بريلي بس أقدر أسوي أشياء معينة. اختاروا الأشياء اللي تقدرون تسوونها وتقدرون تتمرنون عليها وراح تقدرون إنكم تسوونها.
There are different ways of using this A to Z. You can either go through A, B, C, D, or else you can go through the letters of your name. In my case, F, R, A, N, and K.
Yeah, good idea. P-A-U-L. So join things up, mix things up, Try different routes. We're interested in how one thing flows into the next. Don't just get stuck looking at one letter. Explore.
Get out of the chair and do some physical stuff. Don't sit there. You know you're sitting there and you're going, next time. No, go right now. Come on.